Hello, loved ones. This is Matt Stevens, and of course, I hope you're doing super fantastic. And I've been reading Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallee, and also I'm very fascinated with Charle Fort's work. They say he's like the original paranormal investigator. Not so much as like ghosts and things like that, but things that go bump of the night, none of that kind of stuff. But the thing about Charles Fort that's fascinating is he uses mainstream publications to document his research. That's where he finds his what he calls his damned evidence. It's that he says it's damned because it's excluded by the scientific establishment or whoever. Things like fish or frogs, stones, insects, even biological materials such as blood and things like that falling from the sky, just in the clear blue sky, and very randomly it would appear. And it's like, well, okay, so if there are a bunch of, as I've said many times, if it's a bunch of frogs or whatever, or fish that are falling from the sky, then it must have been a whirlwind or a tornado that scooped up the contents of a pond. It's like, well, that does happen, yes. But when that happens, it scoops up the entire contents of a pond, not just one breed of fish or not just one type of frog, right? Because in these incidents that have been documented, and this is in newspapers throughout say the 1800s. He goes pretty far back too, though. 17, 1800s, even early 1900s. But it's like these are incidents that have happened of stuff like that just literally raining out of the clear blue sky with no explanation. It's like, where does this come from? Of course, he develops a theory. He calls it the Super Sargasso Sea. And he says he does that because I think it's up in the Nordic regions, right? There is the Sargasso Sea, and just the way the ocean currents are, a lot of the garbage and just junk that ends up in the oceans ends up there because just the way the currents kind of cycle things up through the Sargasso Sea. So he calls this Super Sargasso Sea in the sky, which is where things just rain down from. And yes, there have been instances of blood corpuscles. It seems like just biological material falling from the sky with no explanation. And then, as I mentioned, I'm looking at Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallee. And Magonia is a region in the sky that is, from fables and folklore and things like that, where the other people, right, which depending upon which era you live in, depending upon, like at one point there was fairies and then maybe elves and goblins and things like that, and nowadays we call it, that the phenomena has introduced itself, I guess, has presented itself to us as aliens, right? As extraterrestrials or just non-human intelligence. It's like, well, that is very all-encompassing, and it's not lost on me that they are using that term NHI, non-human intelligence, now, because that does include fairies and goblins and all of that throughout history, throughout folklore, that have visited from somewhere, right? And that place is Magonia, and it's in the sky and it can't be seen. But then again, we look at, there have been photos, there have been videos, I think somewhere out of China, somewhere even in Ohio, where people were seeing what looked like skyscrapers, which looked like a very large downtown area in the sky, in the clouds. And of course, we're told it's some kind of illusion, some kind of trick of the weather phenomena going on. It's like, okay, so It's like we're seeing a reflection of, say, Chicago in the sky, or say maybe Cincinnati or whatever, if it's in Ohio, in the sky, reflecting off of the sky, reflecting off the clouds, and it looks as if there is a city in the clouds. It's like, well, that's a bit of a stretch, but okay. But then we put these things together. We put together that for centuries, if not longer, there's always been that magical, mystical, folklorish region in the sky that has been termed Magonia, hence Jacques Vallee's book, Passport to Magonia. And then we look at Charle Fort's documented thousands of cases of things falling from the sky. Thunderstones, which are huge stones, which, by the way, do appear to be carved, do appear to, in a lot of cases, have some kind of language or some kind of hieroglyphics or some kind of patterns or whatever on them that we don't recognize on here on the ground. These are things that we don't recognize, and they do appear to come down in a lightning storm with lightning strikes. That's why they call them thunderstones. That these things have been found, and yes, some people will be like, well, yeah, but that would probably be a meteorite. Okay, except that they're always carved in a wedge shape, like a wedge, and they always seem to have these patterns, these hieroglyphics maybe, or some kind of decoration, something on carved into them. That's not very meteorite-ish, right? So those are the things that I'm looking at, and those are the things that make me think, wow, this reality definitely is not what we think it is. There is something else going on. Is it over our heads? Is it something we can't see? Is it cloaked? Is it, that these are the questions that are raised. But a quote was brought to my attention by President Woodrow Wilson from 1914 and the New Freedom, I think. It was, some of the biggest men in the United States are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. This is the President of the United States. This is Woodrow Wilson saying that there are some of the biggest men in the United States. They're afraid of somebody, something that they know is a power somewhere. And it is very, as it says, very organized, very subtle, watchful, interlocked, complete, and pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when speaking in condemnation of it. And it's like, what does all this lead to, right? And I know that a lot of people are like, well, that's all conspiracy theory. Look, it's 2026. There's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there right now that are saying, told you so. So the rest of us who maybe didn't give them much of a chance before, we may want to pump our brakes a little bit and realize maybe we don't have it all figured out. Maybe the story that we've been told of this realm is not accurate. Maybe those big men in the United States that Woodrow Wilson was talking about are those in the know. They do know that there is a power over this realm, and that it does create, I suppose, seek to keep us in the dark, in these feedback loops, right? Keep us from awakening. And then we can get into the whole why that's the case. What would that purpose would that serve? And maybe we could get into the Loosh farm. I tend to go that way. I mean, I really do. Robert Monroe said that it was presented to him that, Loosh is a, and I realize that he went on to say that, there's a more stable version, but nonetheless, that the negative vibrations that living things produce when they're in states of fear and anxiety and things like that are a sustenance or a form of energy for these other beings. And if you don't believe in the spiritual world, well then why are you listening to me? That's what I got. So, but if you haven't hit the like button yet, please, loved one, please do that. I would really appreciate that. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, I would also appreciate it if you would do that. But looking into Jacques Vallee and his control system, he said that there are just that with his control system idea, it shifts the primary research question, right? When we're looking at this phenomena, be it UFOs, UAP, NHI, whatever, because that's how the phenomena is presenting itself to us now. But I also believe that is also why they have changed it from ETs to NHI, because it's like, yeah, they're not extraterrestrial. They're just as terrestrial as we are. But it shifts the idea from wanting to know where do they come from, and maybe what hardware do they use? How do they get here? What kind of technology are they using? It shifts it from that to how does this get here? Meaning, and I don't mean like physically, but how does it process, enter and shape human belief and perception? You see, these things happen. I'll just go ahead with this. It's a stimulus response thing. There's a stimulus that's introduced, and that may be some kind of sighting or some kind of phenomena happening. And then there is obviously a response. So it'd be like an anomalous event. And then either the individuals or the entire culture or a segment of culture or whatever will react to that. And then there will be subsequent manifestations that will present themselves that to adjust that new belief system, or not necessarily belief system, but what their attention is directed towards. They will introduce this and shift the human awareness to that, and then maybe it will introduce some fear or whatever the case may be. But I'm checking my notes here, dear loved one. It's the reinforcement patterns. Statistical analysis suggests periodicity, resembling schedules of reinforcement, as if everything in this reality is on some sort of schedule or periodicity. And when we look through our history, all the way back through the folklore and the fairies and all of that, all the way up to now, modern phenomena, be it UFOs or whatever. I'm old school. I'm trying to get into the UAP thing. Bear with me, dear loved one. Okay, fine. UAP and NHI. Okay. We always called them UFOs and aliens until now. And I'm like, wow, it's not lost on me that they have changed that terminology. And I think they've changed that terminology because it's preparing the public for something. And I think that our controllers, our governments, people like that, if they could keep us in the dark, if they knew that, but I think it's been pretty much exposed. Yeah, this is going to happen, or not exposed, but it's been told to them, this is going to happen. There is going to be some level of disclosure. And personally, I think it's to do with a major shift in what's going on in this realm. I've mentioned resets many times because there is a periodicity to that as well. But that's something that we can definitely get into. But I've been making the connections between Passport to Magonia and Charle Fort and all his falls of things just falling out of the sky, the clear blue sky with no explanation. And how Magonia and that, they do definitely line up. They definitely do. And then that quote of Woodrow Wilson was presented to me about how very powerful people know there is a power that they're afraid of. And it's very organized and very pervasive. That word really stuck out. Very pervasive. And I feel like that's Woodrow Wilson's way of just, you can't say it all, but he got away with saying that much, right? So, anyway, dear loved ones, let me know what are your thoughts. I would really appreciate that. I'm soliciting comments. Yes, it does help with the algorithm. It absolutely does. So if you don't really have anything you want to say, just say hello. That would be great. I would appreciate it. But I would really love to start a dialogue, have some kind of talk about this, because this stuff, it's ramping up. As I've said many times, there is something ramping up. Human consciousness is the awakening, a spiritual awakening. Consciousness is expanding at a very quickly at an enormous rate. It's getting faster. It's getting bigger. Something's about to happen. What is it? I mean, if we look at history, it does look as though there is definitely some kind of reset event on our horizon. But I don't think that is anything that those of us who are experiencing spiritual awakening need to be afraid of. It's just not. This is something that we have gone through many, many times in history. And that those that are in the know, the elite ruling class of this world, they know it. And that's why there's so much history that has been faked or just straight up lied about, because they don't want us to panic. And also they don't want us to understand our true nature, our true power, and the true nature of this reality, because that would make us not very good humans. Remember, we got to continue to produce, consume, and obey. And that's all. Just produce, consume, obey, maybe reproduce, and then do it all over again. And the cycle repeats and repeats until you awaken. Until you awaken to all of these facts. I believe that is when you finally graduate out of this. But how many times you go through it doesn't matter. On the outside of this, there is no concept of time. So it can be 100 times, it can be 1,000,000 times. It's all the same. So anyway, dear loved ones, that's what I got for you. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Besides that, I love you. I do. And I will be back directly.